How do we deal with an avoidant guy who is shutting down when conflict arises and stops talking and withholds intimacy, such as touching, kissing, smiling, for days on end? There's literally so many things we can look at. There's so many things that I could take away. There's so many directions we could branch off into the wilderness. We could climb a mountain. We could go under the river. There's so many directions we can go into, and it's kind of hard for me to choose which direction to go into. Do I start talking about attachment theory? Do I start talking about looking at you being the cause? One thing I definitely want to say here is that shutting down, especially when conflict arises and he stops talking and he withholds intimacy, this is primarily a lack of emotional safety issue. Because it doesn't matter what type of attachment style you are. It doesn't matter if you're borderline personality disorder. It doesn't matter if you believe in the patriarchy or the male loneliness epidemic or just weird ass shit like that. If you believe in red pill, the underlying thing between most people's relationship problems is this. This is the core underlying factor between the majority of all cases. You will do the same thing. You will shut down when conflict arises. You will stop talking when conflict arises. You will perhaps withhold intimacy sometimes. You will withhold your kissing, smiling, touching, etc. when you yourself feel a lack of emotional safety. And it might not just be emotional safety, it could be psychological safety, it could be physical safety. Just you're not feeling comfortable, you're not feeling safe. There is something that you perceive as threatening. Safety can actually mean the absence of threat. So if I was you, I'd be looking at what exactly is threatening this guy. So we're going to be asking ourselves this question. What is causing the other party to feel threatened? One of my personal questions that I like to ask myself is there any reason to fear me? Another great question that I've been asking recently is, what might they be afraid of that I could take away from them? So a personal example for me is with my parents and at my mother's household. And if I am stuck at the house, my safety feels threatened because I don't have a car. If I don't have a car that allows me to retreat when I desire, I feel threatened because my safety is in jeopardy. I won't be able to be alone. I won't be able to escape. I won't be able to withdraw from conflict if it arises, especially very intense conflict. If I don't have a car that allows me to retreat, my agency feels threatened. I feel locked down. I feel pinned down. I feel dependent. If I feel dependent, then I don't feel safe. Is there any reason to fear me is a great question, because it looks at you as being the cause of this other person's fear. This doesn't mean that you are the cause, but if we take on the form of radical accountability, then we should always be looking at ourselves as the primary cause. Because a single action can be brought about by multiple causes or multiple reasons. Both of these things are exactly the same type of thing. And you have the external and you have the internal. The internal is literally the internal realm in yourself or themselves, but it can also be, from our perspective, this is our end of the story. This is our internal locus. We have things in our environment that we can control, that contribute to this other person's action. On their end, they have their own other reasons that might not have anything to do with you. And if we can identify what those are, that's great, and we can be empathetic and we can listen and we can understand. Now, being a girl, you would imagine that this should be your ideal default position, right? You should be able to listen and understand and be empathetic. I understand that's not going to always get you the result that you want. But if this is happening to us, we definitely don't want to be freaking out. Do not freak out. Always remain calm. Under pressure. Another thing, similar to my last video where I'm talking about our internal realm, where we have a cycle going on our side, in our mind, in our subconscious mind especially, we're using terms such as avoidant. And now this is not a good thing because we're putting a label on something and diagnosing the problem in this way. We're kind of saying that this person is flawed. We're kind of saying that this person is the problem. But we need to remove this term avoidant completely. This is, at best, a surface level diagnosis, nothing more. It's basically no different than an F3 response or an F4 response. There's flight, freeze, flee, fight, freeze, and fawn. So these days it's F4 response. And avoidance is literally nothing more different than this. And everyone does all four of these things at different times. It depends on the stimulus. So maybe, let's say you have a bad dream. I know I have a bad dream sometimes. And sometimes in the bad dream, if you're getting chased by a bad guy or something, sometimes I will literally run up to that bad guy and I will punch him. And other times I might try and run away. So sometimes people do different things in real life, same way. Sometimes people just have no idea what to say. Maybe they're trying to respect you by keeping their distance. Maybe, in fact, this person is actually having some trouble processing their own emotions. And I know this whole comment actually reminds me of someone I know a little bit. And they're just looking for a way to cope. They're processing a lot of big emotions and they don't know how to deal with those emotions. So they're going to look for some type of escape. And the reason they're going to be looking for some type of escape again is because they're not feeling safe. There is something threatening them in a sense. So if I was you, I'd be looking to make sure that I'd be looking to make sure the other party's safe. They might be feeling like a cornered dog. Who knows? What you need to do, or this is what I would do, sorry. I don't want to tell you exactly what you're going through because it's literally just a piece of data that you've given me and I'm just working with it. So take what I say with a grain of salt. But if I was in your position, this is what I would do. I'd leave my door open and I'd extend my hand. And I would keep my hand extended and I would keep my door open so that the chances of the other person potentially coming back towards you is increased. Because if you shut the door, you might feel justified and get cranky and close that door for good, thinking that they're such a narcissist or that they're so abusive. A lot of people do that. and they feel so right, and the reasons feel so real, they feel so valid, and there is some validity to be found in those reasonings. But just like on the other page, there's different causes for the same action. And the list of these can be endless. Now, for the action to be brought about, it only takes one of these or one of these to bring about the action. The more, the merrier. And the more challenging it is to untangle. So in a sense, if you had to bring about a certain action on your end, if you had to warp your own cycle to make things a bit different, you have to keep on stacking these reasons and causes up so that eventually they kind of explode like a volcano. And eventually you kind of get the thing that you want as a side effect. And this is very important. You have to make sure this is a side effect, not a business itself. I actually talk about this in my Love Triangle course that you can check in the link of the description of my bio, where I help people mitigate rejection and increase attraction. It's a framework that I've personally used throughout the decade based on observations. I also know from personal experience, if I myself, as a guy, am withholding sexual intimacy, I am feeling very stressed out. This is from personal experience. I'm feeling stressed. I can't even if I'm doing the deed, having sexual intercourse, sometimes I might even pull back or pull away, and this is not a good position to be in, to be honest. But this would be the reason. I'd be feeling so stressed that I'd be in my own head. I'd literally be in my own head a lot. My body would feel, kind of this overwhelming anxiety within me, and it might not necessarily have anything to do with the other party, although the other party might contribute to it. For example, if I'm feeling stressed and the other person starts getting stressed as a retaliation of my stress, that only makes it worse. So that's why you have to be absolutely calm and understanding and not fight against the other person's stress. Don't raise your voice. Don't criticize them for feeling stressed. Because I know if you see someone feeling stressed, you probably want that person to come, you want them to be better. You want them to be good. And because they're not good, that actually stresses you out. And sometimes you might find yourself caving in and crushing the other party to suppress the stress. But that doesn't really help. That's only like a temporary solution, if it works. So yeah, if any sexual intimacy was happening with me, the workings down there would just go more floppy, and they would need a lot more they would need a lot more affection from the woman. This is kind of also in the dating realm when women, they pull back when you try and go in for the kiss. I've done this myself, actually. When I try and go in for the kiss, sometimes it works, but sometimes it doesn't. And if she doesn't want to get kissed, there's something else going on in her mind. There's something else. She might feel guilty. She might not feel that she's ready. She might feel that there's someone else that her heart's set on, and she doesn't want to invest in you because of that reason. She's already set her heart on someone else, and she doesn't want to betray the other person, etc. I've had this happen to me once. A lack of smiling could even suggest the same thing. A little too depressed. Now, I want to show you something about love and self-love. So we have a tree here, right? We have another little tree here. So what a lot of people do, they give to this tree. This could be a depressed person, it could be your romantic interest, your sexual partner, your friends with benefits or whatever, and you start feeling a lot of attraction and oxytocin and whatever. You give so much to this person that you have nothing left for yourself, and that's very unhealthy. A real self-love comes in the form of loving yourself first. You grow yourself first and foremost, right? And then whatever residue comes out of your tree, like rain just flops down your tree, you actually help that tree grow beside you without compromising your tree. This is how I view self-love. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about love mechanics, I recommend the book called The Value of Others. Another important thing about love, such as intimacy and stuff like this, is that love cannot be earned, because love is given at the discretion of the giver. Love cannot be earned because love is given at the discretion of the giver. That is a huge revelation that I came up with or realized after I was reflecting on how the hell love operates mechanically. It was driving me mental. And then I figured this out. And I don't believe that anyone can actually argue with me on this. Like, sure, you can argue with me on that, but I personally believe that this is how love actually operates. So even as this tree, you put your own mask on first before you put the mask on another person on the airplane. If you giving your residue helps the other person grow, you choose to give that. That's at your discretion. This little tree is unable to do anything to earn that. Same with you. If you were the little tree, there's nothing you could do to earn the love from the big tree. The big tree must give you the residue at its own discretion. I hope this makes sense. I have a whole series on YouTube or TikTok where I talk about the mechanics behind rejection and certain mechanics behind how attraction works. So if you'd like to check that out, feel free to check that out, because I go into a lot more details about this. I take it that you personally might be comfortable with conflict. You like conflict. You see conflict as opportunity, perhaps. But for him, he might not be as aware as you are. He might see this as threatening. He might see growth as threatening. He might see challenge as threatening. And he might not mean to come across as this. He might not mean to do any harm. A lot of people think that avoidant people are such horrible narcissists who are betraying you, etc. And some people literally are just massive jerks. Now, if you're going to put up with behavior like that, you have to have a strong stomach. And possibly an even stronger stomach if you want to have boundaries. But boundaries aren't something that you impose on the other party. Boundaries are just something that you impose. They're just something that you impose on yourself. You can't enforce the other party to agree to the terms and conditions of your lifestyle. So for me, my personal favorite boundary could be something like, hey, I understand that we might not be on the same page. If we're not in alignment here, feel free to, go your own way. But if you'd like to stick around with me, then my door is open. I'm still here. I'm still struggling with a little bit of boundaries myself, but this is kind of the area that I would lean in. That's how I would go about it. It's also possible that the things that we say unintentionally can bother the other party, not even just in a threatening sense, but if you bring up, why are you pulling away? Why, blah, blah, blah. This can actually irritate the other person, and it can almost be no wonder why they wouldn't want to talk. This goes for both men and women. And even if you don't mean to come across that way, it can still be interpreted that way. And one other thing that I want to point out is if you go back to some of my older videos, I talk about the mechanics behind cycles and ripple effects. So if we had cycles, every cycle has a ripple effect, and then every ripple effect bounces back to us like echo relocation. And one of the best ways that we can change this whole cycle and ripple effect system is by paying attention to where we focus our eyes or our ears or our mind, basically. So if you keep on looking at the evidence, the 0.1% evidence that is real, that he's an avoidant, he's pulling away, etc. These are essentially affirmations that you're telling yourself on a subconscious level, and your mind loves to addict yourself to whatever you're looking at on a frequent basis. So like bubbles in a boiling kettle pot, you keep on boiling these thoughts up and you keep on focusing way too much attention on him pulling away, he's withdrawing, he's not talking to me. And that because you keep looking at that, that's kind of going to come into fruition a lot more and more and more. And you kind of resist this, and because you resist it, it's going to persist. So we somehow need to addict our brain to looking at the exact opposite, the antithesis. The antithesis, this means the literal opposite. And sometimes if you want to do this even better, you can look at the anti-mirror, which is a mirror within a mirror, which basically means an antithesis within an antithesis. So kind of look at opposites and opposites, look for patterns. And I would look at, I'd say to myself, you know, I feel safe with this person. Just say that to yourself. This is something I'm working with. I feel safe. It doesn't matter if it doesn't come into fruition. We don't freak out about it. We always remain calm under pressure. We just simply say, I feel safe. Why do I feel safe? And then eventually, because questions are like a vacuum, that's how these literally operate. It's going to go on the hunt for answers. It's going to look for them. It's going to want those answers, and there's going to be tons of them. So why do you feel safe with this person? You're going to find a reason. Why do you feel like you can trust this person? You'll find a reason. And I promise you, this will work, and it's still something that I'm working with. This doesn't mean that the other party will change, but based on the mechanics of the cycle system, where the cycle is affected, the internal and the external, with the ripple effects and the echo relocation coming back to you, it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's all it is. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And if you're going to have any change in your physical reality, in your external reality, it's going to take time. Basically, where you've ended up today is a result of the choices and decisions that you've made in the past. So the same is true if you just do...
There's one more thing I'd like to add to this as well, and this might be a bit of a fun exercise when resolving our relationship problems. Because when we're faced with relationship challenges, we often get very caught up in that, especially in a very emotional sense, and our mind is very occupied with that. And that's potentially a dangerous thing on our end, because we become so immersed in that it becomes difficult to see real solutions moving forward. So this fun exercise, we'll start by visualizing the movie Spider-Man Homecoming. If you've watched that movie, you may recall early on in the movie, Doctor Strange punches Spider-Man in the chest, and Spider-Man's sort of spirit form bulges out, explodes out of his body, and he's like, wow, this is amazing. In a sense, Spider-Man is in a very third-person perspective. He can literally see himself. He's zoomed out. That's kind of the same position you want to be in when resolving your relationship problems. Because when you're in the first-person mode, it becomes very entangling, you're very enmeshed. And when you're enmeshed like this, it can be very frustrating to find a resolution. So if you can first ground yourself, be emotionally stable, relaxed, calm under pressure, and pull yourself out into a much more third-party perspective, this is going to aid you in your quest for some type of resolution. And sometimes resolution can come about naturally by just taking non-action. So basically, you don't have to do a lot of action. You don't have to do so many crazy things to make things work. You can just take a back seat and relax just a little bit. And one way you can almost do this is go for walks and not engage with electronic media. Because when you're alone, you're kind of left with your brain, and your brain likes to boil thoughts all the time. It loves thinking. And sometimes those thoughts are painful. But out of nowhere, you're going to get a solution just pop up like that. And this is going to happen more and more the more peaceful and more calm and quiet you are. So if you're taking walks and you're calm, you're quiet, and you're just letting things play out in front of you, you're not resisting those things, you accept those things for what they are, this is going to aid you in your quest for resolution. I'm just going off with my experience, and this is how I would navigate resolving my problems, because I've struggled finding resolutions to my own problems for a long time, and this is just the way I go about it these days. Sometimes some problems are just kind of way too difficult to resolve, and sometimes we just need to accept that things have fallen apart. The vase is broken sometimes. I'm not saying that your situation is, but we just need to accept things sometimes for what they are, without labeling them, without judging them. Definitely don't judge them, and just live with that. One other thing I'd like to add before we hit it off is I was reading a post on Reddit, and it was about this married couple. This dude was complaining about how he always does the dishes, he always puts in so much effort into the relationship, and he does. The things that he does are valid, but the wife was not happy. She was saying, you need to put more time into the kids or something weird like that. Now, he fell short because he was thinking that whatever she was saying was stupid, that she was being unrealistic. And by her saying that, this made her shut down. This made her feel like, if this goes on for long, I might have to divorce, etc., because she's feeling so much pain building up over time where she's wanting an escape. And then when she shared her side of the story on Reddit, then there's a lot of mixed reactions, but the main thing that I took away from her post was that she felt understood and seen. So why was she asking the husband to hang out more with the kids? If we can answer why she wants to have the husband spend more time with the kids, then you can get to a clearer, crystal clear picture of where she's coming from. We're listening, we're understanding. And she's like, wow, I've never felt so seen and understood before. She was saying how the reason she wanted the husband to spend more time with the kids is because she was feeling like she was stuck. She was feeling like she wanted more free time. She wanted more, she didn't want to feel like a house servant herself. She wanted to feel more, like she's not in an opposition to the marriage. That's the whole point. Whereas the husband is thinking that she's being unrealistic. So we have to get to the underlying reasons as to why someone says the things that they're saying. What are they wanting to feel? What are they feeling right now that they would like to feel later? She wants change. She wanted to feel not like a house servant trapped to just clocking in the kids to the schedules at schools and stuff. She wanted to feel more human again. She wanted to feel more appreciated for who she was, etc. But she wasn't feeling that. So she wanted to get from A to B. And this is how she saw the solution moving forward. But the husband didn't quite recognize that. He didn't even see it. He was kind of oblivious to it, unfortunately. And so I would like to imagine that we can aim for the same thing. We aim to understand where the other party is coming from. And sometimes when you discover what this is, there's not really a lot that you can do sometimes. Sometimes you just have to take that in and absorb it and just sit with that. Because you can't really brute force or enforce a solution onto the other party. Because then you'd be imposing your will, and that would actually cause them to pull back even more. So you just have to sit with it and accept it and just live like that. Because sometimes when you're empathetic and you listen, you're not always going to get what you want. But by listening and by being empathetic and understanding over time, for the long term, this is going to put you in a much better position down the track. It could be years later. And the thing about this is I'm reflecting on the law of cause and effect. So if I'm saying years later, I don't know that for sure. What I do know is that there's always a short-term cause, a short-term effect and a long-term effect. So just like when you eat sugar, the short-term effect is an instant spike in blood sugar maybe, I'm not 100% sure on that. You definitely feel very energized very quickly and you feel great. But then over time, you feel kind of like your energy is really low. So you needed something much more sustainable for the long term. The long-term effect of sugar is if you were to eat it every single day, you would probably develop cancer. That's the long-term effect. So every single thing that you do has both a short-term and long-term effect. So if we're listening, being empathetic, we might not get the result that we're looking for straight away, like a salad and exercising. But if we continue to remain listening, empathetic, non-judgmental, observant, relaxed, the short-term effect might not bring about anything into fruition immediately. It might reduce tension. It might put you on good terms with someone, but it might not get you the intimacy that you're looking for. But maybe longer down the track, intimacy and affection will be a much more natural side effect that just comes out of nowhere, because that's just kind of the aura that you attract. I hope this video helps, and if it did, let me know, and I'd love to see a comment from you in the future to see if anything that I've shared with you actually helped, because I know what it's like to be in these very difficult situations where we're feeling so entangled, and I want to make it my mission to help mitigate rejection and increase the chances of attraction.